The world was shocked when Ozzy Osbourne died suddenly. Following this, Tony Iommi finally spoke out, and fans are shocked by what he said. Iommi said that thing about Ozzy that night was different. He couldn't quite explain it until it was too late. What did he see, and did Ozzy already know how to say goodbye? You won't be able to say anything about the truth behind their last moments. Goodbye that no one saw coming. The world woke up to terrible news on July 22, 2025. Black Sabbath's famous lead singer, Ozzy Osbourne, died at the age of 76. He was known as the Prince of Darkness. People in the music world and beyond were shocked by the news. Fans, artists, and news outlets around the world were all having a hard time dealing with the death of a man whose voice, wild energy, and dark charm helped define heavy metal for more than 50 years. Not long ago, Ozzy put on what would be his last show at Birmingham's Villa Park Stadium, highlighted by bright lights. Even though he was in a handmade leather throne and had just gone through a series of spinal surgeries, he still put on a haunting and emotional show. There was no one in the room or on stage who thought this would be his last goodbye. Many people thought that Ozzy's death would be a slow fade. Reports said that his health had improved since his last show, and he was even said to be planning to go back to the studio for one last song. But Ozzy is said to have died peacefully in his sleep at his home in Buckinghamshire, just one day after going to a private dinner with his friends. Sharon Osbourne, his wife, and their children were with him. Ozzy's absence is hard to believe. He was alive, electric, and in charge of the stage at Villa Park just a few days before he died. One more show. An important event took place in Birmingham on July 5, 2025, as Black Sabbath's original members got back together for what would be their last show together. Back to the Beginning was the name of the event, which wasn't just a show. It was a strong tribute to the city where it all began, and it was also the last show for one of the most important bands in music history. Fans were left gasping for air when Ozzy Osbourne, who was in the late stages of Parkinson's disease, made a dramatic entry. He was sitting on a custom-made leather chair with wings that was in the middle of a simple stage that matched Black Sabbath's dark and haunting style. Even though he looked weak, Ozzy's heart was anything but weak. At that moment, he gave it everything he had, and his voice was filled with longing, honesty, and thanks. The open-air field in Birmingham was full of more than 45,000 people. 5.8 million more people watched through a world live stream. It turned out to be one of the most watched live music events of the decade. Some fans came from other countries just to be a part of this farewell. A lot of people knew they might never see the band play again, since Ozzy's health has been getting worse over the years. To make the night even bigger, a legendary group of supporting stars joined the show. Bands like Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Slayer, Tool, and Pantera. Every artist took the stage to not only play, but also honor the metal pioneers. Several musicians talked about how Ozzy and Black Sabbath had influenced their own lives between sets. The stadium was filled with a powerful energy that was both happy and sad. Behind the scenes, the event was just as important as it was huge. It was said that Ozzy made it clear that this show meant a lot to him. It was scary for the doctors, but he insisted on singing one last time for his fans and friends who had been with him for more than 50 years. Close friends and family say he told them he would rather sing on the street in Birmingham than watch from a hospital bed. The event was also a good thing. About 140 million euros were raised through ticket sales, merchandise sales, and gifts made through global streaming. To honor the band's working-class roots and dedication to their hometown, the money was given to Cure Parkinson's, a cause close to Ozzy's heart, and Birmingham Children's Hospital. As the last sounds of Paranoid played in the stadium, the lights went out and everyone stood still. Ozzy put up a shaking hand and tears were welling up in his eyes. Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward all stood next to him and were moved in the same way. There were no fireworks or other flashy effects. Just raw music, brothers who had known each other for a long time, and people who knew this wasn't just a show. It was history. Back to the Beginning was more than just a phrase that night. It was a tribute, a goodbye, and the last roar of heavy metal's original kings. People from all over the world sent memories after he died. Metal Gear, Elton John, Slash, and even Coldplay remembered Ozzy and sent their respects. They called him one of the best performers ever. Fans lit candles outside of Black Sabbath's old studio and met at the house where he grew up in Aston, Birmingham, to honor the life of a working-class boy who became a worldwide star. As honors came in from all over the world, they all pointed to one man, Tony Iommi. Fans of Brother in Arms were waiting to hear from most of them. When asked about Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi finally spoke up. The world found out that Ozzy Osbourne had died the day before, on July 23, 2025. That same day, his longtime friend and Black Sabbath bandmate Tony Iommi finally spoke out. In an interview with ITV News, Iommi said that the loss was unbelievable and that it didn't hit him until he woke up the next morning. That in the weeks before he died, Ozzy had said he really wanted to do one last show in Birmingham, which was their city. He wanted to stand in front of the crowd one last time, but not for a big show. He wanted to do something sincere and easy. He said that Ozzy wanted it to be a real farewell and a thank you to the fans who had been with him for over 50 years. He was excited to do what he loved. Tony's voice broke with emotion as he talked about where it all began. Unfortunately, Ozzy's health did not allow for that last show to happen, but the idea of it will live on in the minds of everyone who knew him. In the same dedication, Tony talked about Ozzy's last days with the band and how he had quietly said goodbye to both the band and the fans. I really can't find the words to describe how sad the news is. He is unique and will never be replaced. Not easy. There were a lot of condolences, old pictures, and emotional messages on social media. Radio stations played old Sabbath songs over and over again. People in the public eye and other artists like James Hetfield of Metallica and Elton John joined the chorus of sadness. It was clear that Ozzy wasn't just a heavy metal famer. He was a cultural hero who was loved by people of all ages and musical styles. They were never normal or short, so Iommi's words were filled with deep sadness. Brothers and singing went together for a long time. Let's go back to the start of it all, how Ozzy and Tony met for the first time, and how it changed their lives. Before they became famous, a long time ago, before they were famous as heavy metal icons, Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne were just two boys traveling the rough streets of Birmingham, England. They didn't start out on stage or in a studio. Their story started in the hallways and classrooms of Birchfield Road School, where they both went to school in the early 1960s. At that time, Birmingham was a city known for its factories. The air smelled like metal and machinery because of the smoke coming from the plant chimneys. Most boys were told that they would work in factories instead of being on stage. It was hard, but life was also honest and plain. It meant that kids like Tony and Ozzy had to grow up with parents who worked hard and didn't have a lot of extras. When he was born, Ozzy was named John Michael Osbourne. He was the fourth of 6 children in a big family in Aston, which is near Birmingham. He was known as the class clown a lot of the time, infamous for making people laugh and causing trouble. He had a hard time with schoolwork, especially reading and writing, but his attitude made up for it. I've heard Ozzy say many times that hearing the Beatles' "She Loves You" as a kid changed his life. Even though he didn't know it at the time, it helped him find his way. Tony Iommi, on the other hand, was more serious and quiet. He was serious and had also grown up in Aston, and mostly kept to himself. He liked music since he was young, but he had no idea how it would affect his life. Although Ozzy let everyone know he was there with jokes and pranks, Tony seemed more shy and preferred to watch than talk. Even though they were different, there was something that made them click. They knew each other at school, but weren't close friends right away. The harsh teachers, tight rules, and the bleak future of factory life were what brought them together in the end. Before they went down that road, they both saw what life had to offer, but deep down, they both wanted more. They lived on different streets, and even after school, they kept running into each other. It began as a casual acquaintance that grew into a deep relationship. Tony would think about those school days many years later. Think about how Ozzy's energy stood out even back then. It wasn't often that rock stars were born in Aston, but these two boys had the spark of something different. Before they were famous and made music, they were just friends who met in schoolyards, under smoky skies, and with dreams too big for Birmingham. Let me now tell you about how these two good friends from Birmingham's smoky streets rose from nothing to rule the music world and become rock history heroes. From Black Sabbath to now. Black Sabbath led a musical movement in the heart of Birmingham in the early 1970s. Tony Iommi's deep, riff-driven guitar work and Ozzy Osbourne's haunting, expressive singing gave the band's sound a unique edge. They showed the world a darker, heavier side of rock music. At first, it was hard for reviewers to describe what they were hearing, but fans loved it right away. They were not only seeing a new band, but also the start of a whole new genre, heavy metal. When Black Sabbath's self-titled debut record came out in 1970, it opened with the eerie sound of church bells and thunder, making them stand out right away from other bands of the time. They used the raw, dark mood of the record to capture the fear and uncertainty of the working-class life they knew so well. The lyrics were about war, paranoia, and the supernatural, and they hit home with a generation that was going through a lot of social and political change. When they came out with Paranoid a few months later, it was their big break. Their record, Paranoid, shot to fame with hits like Iron Man, War Pigs, and the title track. To fame around the world, it went to the top of the charts in both the US and the UK, showing that their sound was popular around the world. Fans liked how strong, intense, and honest the band was. Iommi's distorted, heavy guitar tone and Ozzy's cutting emotional delivery made something that had never been heard before. Those early records did not just happen to be hits. During the decade, Black Sabbath put out a number of important albums, such as Master of Reality, Volume 4, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage. Each record kept breaking new ground. Iommi's guitar playing got more creative, and he often used more than one track at a time. The songs talked about things like mental health, addiction, and the bad side of fame. Even though both Iommi and Osbourne were having personal problems and tensions were rising within the group, their relationship stayed strong. In an interview, Iommi said, "What we made together was bigger than any of us." That quote shows not only how successful they were, but also how they felt about each other as artists without saying it. During the 1970s, Black Sabbath played to packed stadiums all over Europe, North America, and other places. They got fans from all different generations to stick with them. It wasn't long before their impact spread to other bands, including Metallica, Iron Maiden, and Slayer, who would later say that Sabbath created metal. Black Sabbath had sold more than 75 million records around the world by the end of the decade. That was the end of their time as Birmingham musicians. They had become world stars who changed what rock music could be. There were also hard times that put their friendship to the test. Let's look at how they dealt with these problems and kept the friendship that began before they found fame. Testing times and getting back together, Black Sabbath's path was never easy. By 1979, personal problems and disagreements had hit a breaking point, especially for Ozzy Osbourne. The band had a hard time working together because Ozzy became more and more dependent on booze and other drugs, and the music business put a lot of pressure on them. After many failed attempts to stay together, the band's remaining members, led by Tony Iommi, made the tough choice to split up with their longtime lead singer. The breakup marked the end of an era. Afterwards, Ozzy said that being fired from Black Sabbath was the worst thing that ever happened to him, but it was also the start of his journey by himself. At the same time, Iommi took it upon himself to protect the name of the Sabbath. He tried out different singers and band lineups over the next 20 years. Even though singers like Ronnie James Dio, Ian Gillan, and Tony Martin added their own styles to the band, it was always missing the band's original unity. Even though the music was still strong, both fans and reviewers often wished that the original lineup would come back. Behind the scenes, Iommi and Ozzy's friendship never really went away. As the years went by, old scars started to heal, and both men looked back on their younger years with fondness and respect. Their past together, which began with being friends in school and discovering music together, was too deep for even the worst trials to undo. In 2013, the long-awaited get-together finally took place. Iommi, Osbourne, and Geezer Butler, the original trio, got back together to make a new studio record called 13. The record did well at the stores. It debuted at #1 in several countries and was praised for bringing back the raw energy of their early work. It was not just a comeback, it was a new start. As soon as the record came out, the band went on a huge world tour. Even though drummer Bill Ward didn't go on tour because they didn't agree, the return was still seen as a success. Fans all over the world were thrilled to see Iommi and Ozzy back on stage together. It was the end of an era in music when Ozzy died, but Tony Iommi thinks his songs will live on forever. Listen to Iommi talk about how Ozzy has changed the world of rock and metal, from Iommi's point of view. Tony Iommi's death of Ozzy Osbourne was more than just the end of a musical chapter. It was the death of a brother, a friend, and someone who had been a constant in his life for more than 50 years. In the days after Ozzy's death in July 2025, Iommi's words showed how sad millions of people around the world were. He just said, "There will never be another Ozzy." That sentence was weighed down by years of being on stage, backstage, in workshops, and on the road together. It was a goodbye, not just to someone who worked with them, but to someone whose spirit helped form rock music itself. Iommi thought Ozzy knew it would be his last shot. Iommi said that he gave everything he had and then quietly left. Not only did it show how much Ozzy loved music, but it also showed how determined he was to end his journey with his bandmates and fans, where it all started. Iommi didn't talk about awards or record sales when he thought about Ozzy's impact. Instead, he talked about times when they laughed together and got through hard times together. "We've been friends for a long time," he said in a quiet, thoughtful voice. There was only one Ozzy. Iommi could never get enough of Ozzy, both for his voice and for the crazy magic he brought to every room he walked into. There are a lot of people who remember Ozzy in the music world, the crazy lead singer who changed the way heavy metal could sound and feel. His voice, which was rough, emotional, and easy to recognize, became Black Sabbath's soul. Heavy metal bands like Metallica and Elton John and teenage fans finding Paranoid for the first time are just a few of the people who have praised Ozzy's impact on the rock world. For Iommi, that heritage is close to home. It lives on in more ways than just the albums and shows. It lives in the bond they made in the Birmingham factories and streets. And even though Ozzy is dead, Iommi thinks his name will live on forever. It will roar through the speakers of every fan who turns it up all the way. What do you think about the strong bond between Ozzy Osbourne and Tony Iommi? Drop your ideas in the box below.